The views expressed on the Nova Society are those of the panelists and guests and do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of the Phoenix Research Institute or any institution which any panel member is associated. Welcome back to the Nova Society, a space where dialogue deepens understanding and civic responsibility comes to life. I'm Dr. Mark Bound, joined by our regular panel, Dr. Scott Gershwer and Dr. Brooklyn Ann Weldon. Together, we'll unpack the stories that matter most, exploring the headlines, the history, and the big ideas shaping today's conversations. Let's dive in and hear what the panel has for us today.
Today we have a question from Rachel, who writes to us from Monterey, California. And Rachel writes, last week, Senator Rand Paul held a hearing aimed squarely at attacking Dr. Anthony Fauci, essentially a physician with a long record of controversial claims, going after one of the world's foremost experts on infectious diseases. Senator Hawley jumped in as well, trying to score points, while Dr. Fauci invoked the Fifth Amendment in response to nearly every question. At one point, they even removed Fauci's attorney from the room, which struck me as completely outrageous. The core issue, of course, is whether the NIH, that's the National Institute of Health, funded research in China that could have contributed to the COVID outbreak. But what stood out just as much was how intensely politicized the entire hearing became. It raises the question, are Republicans planning to use this spectacle as a campaign tool in November? If so, what talking points might they lean on? And if they do weaponize this, how should Democrats respond? Excellent questions. Mark, Scott?
Yeah. Mark, I find it strange that they would even bring up COVID at this point. It's like, hasn't it sort of faded into the memory? He's done, he's so good. Trump is so good at bringing up one thing after another and just piling it all on and throwing as much stuff as they could and flooding his own, or however you want to talk about it, that I think most Americans would rather just forget about the coronavirus altogether. But anybody who has forgotten about it was forced last week to remember it again. And they're going into a midterm election where, the Democrats can simply say their opponent supports a president who told Bob Woodward privately or in an interview that was going to be a book as early in February 2020 that he deceived the American people, saying, to be honest with you, I always wanted to play it down. I still like playing it down because I don't want to create a panic. As an American, I would prefer to just have the information and I'll take care of my own panic. And, the way he handled that virus-stricken cruise ship out there, he didn't want them to land on shore because then that would be against his numbers. I like the numbers where they are. I don't need the numbers to double because these guys get off a ship. When he told everybody that by April it would all be gone as soon as the weather warmed up, it's nothing worse than the common cold and it would be gone. And 1 million Americans died because of the way Donald Trump handled the coronavirus. And I can't prove this, but I know it's true that if Hillary Clinton was president, that this would have been contained and it would have been a small inconvenient matter, not a million Americans dead. And if you look, by the way, just one last point, if you look at counties that voted for Trump and counties that voted for Clinton, what you would find is that the death rate is something like 70% higher in those Trump counties than they were in counties that voted for Hillary Clinton, because those people in his counties were looking for horse dewormers and shining lights in their lungs and injecting bleach into their bodies and things like that, and not interested in actual science because their president told them so.
Yeah. All right. So let me take it would have been better under Clinton. First of all, I don't believe so. only because you were still going to have those stupid people in those counties that voted for Trump. And no matter what Clinton did, those people still would have died. I mean, that's just kind of the way it is. I think the response would have been better. Absolutely. I think it would have been more timely. I think there would have been more sanity to the response. But as far as, would it have been better as far as the numbers are concerned? When you've got a bunch of stupid people, what are you going to do? There's just going to be stupid no matter who the president is. So I might not be able to agree with that part of it. But I will say this. Who was the president while Fauci was in his position? Donald J. Trump. It's his administration. Plain and simple. Rand Paul, you're an eye doctor, and that's kind of questionable too, because like you got your board certification from a board you created, and whatever, and you're questioning somebody that really has done this their entire lives. I understand the argument. The argument is it acceptable to fund research to create these kinds of things, or should we not do that? I get that argument. But I would also say, there's two sides to it. If you create these viruses for the purpose of finding a cure, which is exactly the only reason we do it. I mean, there's some countries, they create these viruses basically to use as weapons, as biological weapons. But this was really to, a super flu. This goes back to The Stand. If you've ever read The Stand from Stephen King, this is the super flu. This is exactly what it is. And they basically were they were creating it, they were working with it. Did it escape? We don't know. I mean, there is no definitive answer as to where this came from. But anyway, should we do this research? That's a very good question. That is an extremely good question. But my attitude is that this is something that the NIH has done forever. This has been done forever. And Dr. Fauci basically believes that, hey, I want to be prepared for those viruses if and when they come. And if I learn from the COVID-19, if COVID-19 was truly created in a lab, that's why we got a response. That's why we got vaccines as quickly as we did, because we understood more about it. That's the one thing that makes me think that it didn't come from the lab. Because if it did, we should have known more about it right in the beginning than we did. So there was that question. I mean, as I say, I get the argument. Question is do you want to be prepared or do you not? And the only way you can be prepared is you have to have the thing to fight it. You have to create it. Is it dangerous? Absolutely. Should we be letting China do it? Probably not. But then again, they're well equipped to do it. I mean, they're well equipped for it. So, I get the argument, but from my standpoint, like Scott said, just give me the information. I want to know that if some bad actor was to create something like this, we have the ability to fight it, and we know what to do. And by creating this virus, whatever they created in China, might have been COVID, might have been not, we learned something, and that's why we were able to come up with a vaccine in absolute record time. If this hit us slap in the face, it could have been a lot worse than it is. So, and this was mostly theater. When they kicked out Fauci's lawyer, of course, this is a Rand Paul hearing. All those people behind cheering. I mean, you had Laura Ingraham was in the audience. I mean, come on. This was as political theater as they get. Can the Republicans use this? Oh, absolutely, they're going to try to use it. Ooh, Fauci took the Fifth Amendment. That's terrible. Of course, they don't mention the fact that Trump took it 500 times when he was being. Oh, well, we forget about that part of it. And the fact is, Fauci gave a great opening statement. You just want me to say something that you can hang your hat on. And he's right. He's absolutely right. Here's a guy that really did a lot to save a lot of lives. And give him a pat on the back, let him retire, and shut the hell up, Rand Paul. I don't know. I look at this and I say this is nothing but political theater. How can the Democrats basically fight this? Just bring up how many times Trump took the fifth. Just bring up, the fact that we came up with a vaccine that did not have little transistors in them, which could tell you, which could tell all the information about you.
The whole thing.
Fight crazy.
The whole thing just seems so crazy. Did you agree with me that this is political malpractice? Why would you bring this up now? It's a midterm. Yeah. We're looking at a midterm election in a few months, and they're bringing up something that had to be the most embarrassing thing, one of the most embarrassing things ever to happen to the Republican Party, the response to that. And look, I'm just going to go, I don't want to rerun all the history, but Crimson Contagion was a pandemic simulation that the United States did in 2019 that tested our response to a severe respiratory virus that they dubbed H7N9 that came from China and spread to Chicago via tourists, and then was projected to infect about 110 million Americans and cause 500,000 deaths or more. And it was a war game on a virus that involves 19 federal agencies in 20 states, including Connecticut, and different tribal nations and local health departments and private healthcare partners. And they simulated this thing, and they revealed that they didn't have the stockpiles that they needed of masks and ventilators, which was Fauci's big lie. I mean, if you really get down to it, what Fauci was lying about was you don't need to mask up now, because he knew that they didn't have enough masks. And he was worried that healthcare professionals wouldn't get the masks that they need if everybody in the public was going after those masks. And if you remember, the governor of Maryland at the time had to call South Korea because he had some connection there through his wife to get imported masks for Maryland. Governors were largely left on their own. Second, John Bolton, who was the national security advisor at the time, fired everybody or disbanded an office that was in the White House that was designed to monitor and stop or mitigate any infectious diseases that came from abroad. And he said, "Oh, this is just a waste of money. We don't need it." And the CDC cut their staff in China. And like they did everything, Trump did everything that he could to create a pandemic that I don't think Hillary Clinton ever would have done.
No,
because she was in the administration. She was not in the administration when Obama ran the test in 2019, but she was certainly close enough to them that she would have been aware of Crimson Contagion and how they had this playbook, and the playbook worked in other countries that took it and ran with it, but it didn't work here because we threw it out, and Trump didn't want it and thought it was a big waste of time and money, and did away with those offices in China at exactly the wrong moment with his magic touch of turning everything that he touches into absolute shit. And that's why we had why an epidemic became a pandemic. And we didn't stop it in China like we should have. As far as Fauci is concerned, look, I think he did a good job during COVID as best he probably could have. He could have been a little bit more forthcoming with his reasons for stating that you didn't need a mask or that this wasn't airborne or whatever it was that they're saying. I don't know anything about the what do you call it again? The testing that they were doing in China that may have created this thing to happen in a lab to have it escape and run rampant in China. And then here again, it's certainly possible. I have no insight into that. I don't think anybody does. Is Rand Paul correct that we need to get the answers to that? Yes, because you want to be able to stop it next time and you have to know what's going on. But whether it came from a lab or whether it came from a wet market, or whether it was a bat that infected a pig that was eaten by a person, the whole thing, any of that, the response to it was botched by the Trump administration. he was the president of the United States, not Anthony Fauci. Most people hadn't even heard of Anthony Fauci until this all started. And deflecting responsibility to a public servant is, is just such typical Trump nonsense and garbage. Nobody should take this stuff seriously.
And that's probably what the response from the Democrats should be. Basically laying it out exactly for what it is. And I think that's the only way to do. Now, of course, this is going to play really well with the Trump base. They're going to forget that Trump took the fifth 500 times or however many times he took it. They're going to forget all that because none of that matters. But the fact is at the time of the COVID pandemic, Donald J. Trump was the president of the United States. And people within his administration absolutely, as Scott has pointed out, destroyed the infrastructure necessary to be able to take care of this. There was a playbook that was handed to Donald J. Trump on how to deal with this. And it already came out and said, hey, you know what? You need more stuff. Fauci basically not promoting masks at the time. I'll tell you why, and I will agree with this with Scott. It probably was so that make sure that the healthcare providers had them. Because let's remember what happened with toilet paper. You would go to Costco, and some of the MAGA, morons were loading up with boxes and boxes of toilet paper and basically buying it out. That it came to a point like places like Costco and Sam's Club and places like that had to limit how many you could buy so that everybody had access to it. Can you imagine if Fauci said, oh, you got to have these N95 masks? Every MAGA moron would have been out there buying every freaking one they could, because all they care about is themselves. We just want to keep ourselves alive. That's all. Doesn't matter. And then I know there are people here now that wouldn't have gone to buy the mask. I'm not a dog. I don't have to wear a mask. Well, I'll say this, and it's great to have empathy for people. But when this was in the middle of it, when we were in the middle of this pandemic, and you'd see somebody in the hospital who had his little MAGA red hat on, who was dying and was going to die within the next 12 hours and said, I wish I had taken the vaccine. Your choice. Yeah. I have no empathy. Yeah. I'm sorry. It was available to you. And no, there wasn't little transistors in there that were going to tell you everything that, about your life. I'm sorry. I mean, it's kind of Darwin's theory of evolution. There we go.
Just yes. one more point on that is simply I think we should know about the gain of function, which is the word I was looking for before, research, and we should know what happened.
Yep.
But this is not how you're going to find out what happened. And if they wanted to say, look, we need you to come in, you're under no scrutiny, like a danger of being arrested or anything like that, you have total immunity. We just really need to know what happened here. And if Fauci has answers for that, we would love to hear them.
Do you think Fauci
I think
knows?
I don't know. I don't know enough about it. I don't know if anybody knows enough about it. Whether this look, I mean, I think the Republicans are sore because every time they brought up something like this, it kind of got shot down and became like a political thing, right? So if somebody says, oh, this clearly came from China and was engineered by the Chinese on purpose and sent here. Look, if the Chinese wanted to kill us, they would have sent something a lot more virulent than COVID, right? They could have created something that really would have been devastating to people, and nobody would have survived it. Not just obviously the oldest and the sickest and the people in the worst shape are the ones who fall victim to respiratory diseases and things like that. You could certainly send over like a hemorrhagic fever virus or something like that to kill everybody. I don't think that that's the case. I don't think that, and certainly Trump didn't, because Trump was praising Xi for his response to it while it was devastating China, right? So I don't think it is. But at the same time, I don't know. And I wouldn't mind hearing the answers for that. And I think that if we did hear the answers for that, one thing that would have to come out would be that if the CDC offices in Wuhan, China, which I had never heard of before the 2020, if their offices there were functioning and they were doing their jobs instead of those offices being shut down, that this would have been contained and it would not have spread everywhere. And Trump took credit for shutting down airports and things like that, but he had to be talked into that. And the idea of shutting down the airport from China came a lot earlier from, I want to say Azov, was that his name? Whoever the Health and Human Services Secretary was. And here's another thing, just parenthetically, I'll let it go with this. Stop hiring unqualified people for their jobs.
Yes.
Right? William, what was his name? Redstein, whatever his name was, the bald guy with the King Tut beard, the dude who looked like King Tut. He was the wrong guy for that job. He wasn't qualified for that job. He was basically, I think, an AIDS denier or something like that, which was his qualification to Trump. And so you have to have good people in their roles. And I guess we should be lucky that Fauci somehow flew under the radar right until then. And they brought back Deborah Birx from Africa, who had to stand there and listen to Trump talk about injecting bleach, and shining ultraviolet lights in people's lungs, which would have caused cancer immediately. So it's like you got to have some good people involved in these functions that are important and keep us safe. That includes all our cyber stuff, which is now the new denial thing, and all the the military people and the Secretary of Defense and everything else. This idea that we don't need experts because we have Trump and he's the expert of all experts is just wrong.
Yeah. And actually, that was Scott Atlas.
Was it?
Was another one that they put in there. Yeah, Scott Atlas was the guy that Trump really thought was going to be anyway. And let's also keep in mind, if we're ever going to get the truth, it's got to come out of China. Good luck with that.
And one more point is that Trump has been canceling science grants and research funds all over the place. Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw him briefly on a news program pointing out that friends of his are getting phone calls, friends of his whose research grants have been canceled. They're getting phone calls from Europe, from Spain, from China, from saying that come here and we will fund you all your research. You can have a grant, you can have this, you can have whatever you want. Mm-hmm. And they're leaving the United States. And Klaus Kellerman, who's a Canadian, was saying, Canada also, people need to come here, and we benefit, and the United States is losing its research base. And Neil, or Dr. Tyson, was upset that the United States is no longer leading anything in science.
Crazy. Seems so crazy. Just to hear it sounds so crazy.
It is, and that the Trump administration and Trump himself is killing science and science education in this country.
The thing about it, Germany would have had the bomb before us if they weren't so anti-Semitic and chased all the scientists out.
Yep.
Yeah, and I never thought it would happen here, and yet it is now in our lifetime. It's staggering. It really is, and people are leaving through invitation phone calls.
And that's all the time we have for today's episode. The Nova Society is a production of Nova Society Media, a division of the Phoenix Research Institute. We want to thank our production partners, Buzzsprout, who hosts the Nova Society, Audacity, our editing team, Apple Podcasts, the largest source of podcast and music online, Spotify, the most popular platform for the Nova Society, and iHeartRadio, your destination for all things music and podcasting. The Nova Society is available on all of these and other quality platforms listed in our description. And most importantly, we want to thank you, our listeners. Without your support, the Nova Society could not be possible. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing on the platform of your choice. It's easy, it's free, and helps our channel grow. For questions or comments, you can reach us at nova.society.podcast@gmail.com. So on behalf of Dr. Brooklyn Ann Weldon, Dr. Scott Gershworth, and all of our production partners here at the Nova Society, I'm Dr. Mark Bound. Remember, the true power of society is knowledge. Thank you for listening, and we hope to see you again next time. We'd like to thank our sponsor for this episode, the Journal of Interdisciplinary Conflict Sciences, the JICS. This open access journal, double peer-reviewed, provides a platform for emerging scholars to publish their work and engage in meaningful dialogue across disciplines. The JICS is currently accepting article submissions on an ongoing basis and is published through the NovaWorks Scholarly Repository at Nova Southeastern University. You'll find a link to the journal in our episode description.